Hello and welcome to Smaulgld special analysis on the raid on Donald Trump's personal lawyer. Raid on Trump's lawyer's office. What's next? Let's take a look. First of all, we need to know the lay of the land. So what is the special prosecutor looking for? The special prosecutor is Robert Mueller. He was appointed by Rod Rosenstein to investigate Russian collusion in the 2016 election. The Attorney General Jeff Sessions recused himself from the investigation due to his supposed somehow he had a contact with a Russian during 2016. Yet Rod Rosenstein was involved in the surveillance of the Trump administration, signed off on the FISA warrants. And he shouldn't even be involved himself. He has a greater reason to have recused himself than Jeff Sessions, and yet he's the one who appointed Robert Mueller. Also, if they want to go after Trump on a collusion, on a obstruction of justice case, well, Rod Rosenstein is the one who suggested that Comey be fired. And one of the points I'm sure they would raise if they were to go after Trump for obstruction of justice is that he fired Comey. So Rosenstein sits amidst a tremendous amount of contradictions and conflicts. And he was the one, along with Robert Mueller, who authorized this raid on Attorney Cohen's offices, home, and hotel room. Now, they didn't do it through their own auspices. They authorized the New York Southern District to do so. Now, what is the point of the raid? Because, first of all, if the special counsel was appointed to investigate Russian collusion, and a point I've made before is, well, then they should have been looking into, or interference into, the election. They should be also speaking to the Clinton campaign people, the Bernie Sanders campaign people, and the Jill Stein people, and they're only focused on the Trump people. Now, we understand why that is, because the people that are doing the investigation were involved in the letting off of Hillary Clinton. You had McCabe, who was involved in leading the Hillary Clinton email campaign investigation. We also have Rod Rosenstein signing off on the FISA warrants. So they really can't investigate themselves. And supposedly, all of this is going to come out in the Inspector General's report. So what we have right now is a case, I believe, after a year and a half of trying to get Trump on the Russian angle, they have now switched tactics. Because this isn't about trying to show Russian collusion. They already showed that. They showed that by indicting a Russian troll farm and showing that they bought some Facebook ads and tried to influence the election. All right, so we know that, and we didn't even need an investigation to know that Russia and others try to interfere with U.S. elections. All countries do it to each other. You don't need a special counsel for that. The purpose of a special counsel is to go after usually a specific crime, not just some general counterintelligence probe or investigation. But Mueller has been given broad discretion by Rosenstein, basically to get Trump and to find something on him in order to get rid of him. So, yesterday they raided the offices of Donald Trump's lawyer, Michael Cohen. And immediately the anti-Trumpers and the left went absolutely bonkers. This is it. This is great. We're going to get Trump frog marched out of the Oval Office. This is the problem you have when you're on outcome-based politics only and you really don't care about principles of law, principles of ethics. And in their mind, they say, well, Trump is so evil and so bad, quote, by any means necessary, not realizing that these means, if you authorize them, and if you're not in power, can easily be used against you, and the so-called, quote, fascism that you're trying to prevent will actually be visited upon you. Now, what happened was they raided the offices of Cohen, his home, and his hotel room. Up until now, the story has been that Cohen has been producing whatever documents they have requested. So these types of raids are generally when they're so concerned that there's going to be a crime committed, that usually it's a type of crime of imminent danger, and that they realize that the lawyer may be involved and they need to get at the documents. What I think is happening here is, I don't know what the scope is or what they're saying they're trying to get, but they're trying to say that this lawyer has committed some type of campaign fraud, wire bank fraud, and this might be related to payments to Stormy Daniels. Now, this is not a huge matter of national security or personal danger or Cohen being a flight risk, yet they chose to go this route, supposedly to obtain this particular evidence. Now, when you do a raid of this sort, there's the attorney-client privilege, and a lot of people are pointing out, well, but there's a fraud exception to that. Yes, there's a fraud exception to the attorney-client privilege. It's very hard to prove, but also you can't prove it by suspecting that there's fraud between the client and his attorney, and then raiding the offices, taking the documents, and then saying, oh, we found the document that proves the fraud. That's not how it works. You can't just raid a attorney's office because otherwise, and this is just principle 101 of the legal system and justice, all the FBI would have to do is raid the offices of the attorneys of any suspect they have under either investigation or under criminal proceedings, gather the evidence, and bingo, they can win their case because they've just gotten the evidence because the client told the attorney X, Y, and Z. It's all incriminating. It indicates there may be a crime, and now they can say, see, we were right. That's not how it works. So why did they do it? Well, I know, I think I know why they did it, and I posted this within minutes of the raid, is they're going to get all this evidence. They didn't just raid his office looking for one thing. They just boxed up everything they could find, and they bring it into a room. Now, supposedly, these guys, Mueller and the other, they have to assign somebody to sift through this stuff and decide what's relevant, what isn't, what they can use, what they can't. But, you know, these are people. Once they see stuff, they've seen it. They can't unsee it. It's just like when somebody goes into court and the judge says, you can't bring this into evidence, and the lawyer brings it into evidence anyway, and then they try to tell the jurors, you didn't hear that. They generally have to declare a mistrial. Now, this is not about getting Trump on any particular. They'd like to prosecute him, but this actually makes it less likely that they can prosecute him, because anything they find in the documents of Cohen are most likely not going to be admissible against him in a criminal proceeding. However, as we've seen, the FBI's MO has been in recent years, whenever they want something out and something known that isn't necessarily legal to do under FBI rules, they leak it to the press. Now, if the FBI wanted to, they have all this evidence. It could have nothing to do with Stormy Daniels. They could have nothing. They could have his tax returns. It could have nothing to do with Russia. But there probably is something in there, or could be something on there, possibly. That's why they conducted the raid. Something in there that's embarrassing or indicates potential criminal liability, and something that would be probably cherry-picked, you know, without any context, and it could look bad, and it can be leaked. And I think that's what they're looking to do. Get something on Trump, get it out into the open, get it out through their ways of disseminating information, New York Times, Washington Post, CBS, so on, and have him convicted in the court of public opinion. When I say convicted, they know that the midterm elections are coming up. You put some damaging information out there, and then in October, November, when the elections come up, the Democrats win. And again, they go towards using impeachment as a political tool rather than any, I mean, you have to have crimes or misdemeanors in order to impeach, but they don't care. We've heard people like Maxine Waters say, we're just going to get him. You know, he's done, we don't like him, so we're going to impeach him. People don't understand what the concept is. But that we're seeing now is even at the highest levels of the FBI with the FISA warrants, that basically if you want an outcome and you have the law in your hands, not necessarily on your side, well, basically you can do what you want. So I think they're going to try to get some of this evidence leaked out to the public to show that Trump has done something wrong. Now, this begs the obvious question: is why wouldn't Trump just fire everybody? Well, you can't fire everybody. First of all, firing everybody doesn't make anything go away; it just makes the people go away. And if you fire Sessions, that doesn't do you any good, because Sessions is they just have to appoint another one, and then the Senate had trouble appointing Sessions. They're not going to appoint somebody that's very favorable to Trump. Trump doesn't really have the ability legally to fire Mueller. You'd have to fire Rosenstein. Rosenstein is the one who appointed Mueller. Rosenstein would have to fire Mueller. But again, you'd have to have somebody appointed to replace him. And I think what they want to do is, because they haven't been able to get Trump for anything yet, and they really haven't been able to damage his popularity, because he came in with about 50% popularity. He has about that now. They'd like to destroy him, but they haven't been able to do so. So this raid is another attempt, I believe. They're using the concept, I believe, it had to be really, really, really bad in order for us to attack, or not attack, but invade and raid the lawyers' offices to take documents. And there's no way this would have passed without any type, if this wasn't the biggest deal ever. Now, we've seen that with false flags. We see the same thing is, well, obviously, if this raid happened or this attack happened and it was done in the Gulf of Tonkin, or it was done by someone gassing their own people, well, then obviously there's no other consequence. We have to act. So they use the idea that they found a judge, most likely, who was favorable. Remember, they had a FISA judge who signed off on all the surveillance warrants based on phony dossiers. So it's not like you can't find a judge. Having a judge approve something isn't proof positive that there's something really going on. It means what's going on is you have a favorable judge that you can do this. So I think Mike Cernovich was saying this is a really big deal. You have to bet that they had crossed their T's and dotted their I's before they pulled this thing, and this is a really big deal. And, I just wrote, you think they wouldn't issue a search warrant without dotting their I's and crossing their T's, using their FISA court applications as a guide? I mean, if you want to find a judge and you're in government and you've been around government long enough and you're a government attorney, judges. You may have gone to law school with them. You've had social relationships throughout the years. And like anyone else, just because they're in government and there's rules against it doesn't mean there isn't a possibility for corruption. I'm not saying it happened here, but I'm also saying that you cannot say definitively that just because they signed off on something and they raided the lawyers' offices that there must be something really big. Because as we've seen, there may not be. Now, this crime fraud exception they keep pointing to that doesn't allow the attorney-client privilege to stand, again, cannot be rendered moot. Now, someone was trying to tell me on Twitter that they raided the offices because the judge was convinced that they could get a attorney-client privilege exemption. They can't, because they would already have to have proof of the fraud in order to get the exemption. What they're doing was they weren't raiding the offices to moot or to get the exemption on the attorney-client privileges. They were raiding the offices of Cohen to get him because they think he may have committed a crime. They weren't trying to go in there to get the attorney-client privilege mooted. However, that ends up being the effect, not that the attorney-client privilege has been granted an exemption by the raid. Indeed, the raid may actually raise the attorney-client privilege, because even though the raid was authorized, the raid did not authorize the giving an exemption to the attorney-client privilege on the basis of fraud. Because, as I said, if they find the fraud as a result of the raid, even if they suspected the fraud, that doesn't make the attorney-client privilege go away, because they would have to have proof of the fraud before the raid. So this all looks like it's headed towards the Inspector General's report is coming out. Trump doesn't seem to be going away, and they need to have something. The next insurance plan they have are the midterm elections. And they need to ensure that the Democrats get in power so they at least can bring impeachment proceedings and try to cripple the presidency that way, because it doesn't look like they're going to be able to get him on Russian collusion. The obstruction of justice is somewhat of a real stretch, because the president can fire whomever he wants in his departments, as it's his job and it's his right to do so. And I think that's also why Rosenstein made the recommendation to fire Comey. I think what they're looking to do in this case, they want Trump to go ballistic and say, you're all fired. They think that they've seen him on TV. They understand him. He likes to say you're fired. This way, if he can fire Rosenstein, Sessions, McCabe, no, he's already gone, Mueller, if he fires all of them, then they can go on, the Washington Post, the New York Times can go into overdrive how the Mueller investigation was on his heels and he fired them. You could see they wouldn't have raided the offices if he knew they were closing in on him. So he fired everybody, and now we know he's guilty. That's what they want him to do. And that's the immediate reaction is, this is outrageous. We can't let this stand. And these guys got to go. Now, this is the problem we're in right now. One side's playing by the rules, the other side isn't. And they both have it in their minds. The other has to go. Trump has it within his power to make them go. But the ultimate objective of the other side is to have Trump go. So if basically they're willing to say, okay, well, fire those guys, and now you're out of here because the Congress, the public will turn against you. Not sure of that, but they think that that's a possibility, and that's a way of getting rid of Trump. So they have, I think, decided, the Comey, Mueller clan, and all those behind them, that Trump has to go. And they think right now we can intimidate his lawyer. We can maybe convince him to fire us, and somehow that's how we'll get in. And then if he doesn't fire us, we'll continue to do interrogation or these tactics that it would tend to intimidate people around him. And maybe we'll get the Congress changed at the end of the year. So it looks like this is game on, so to speak. I don't think this has anything to do with finding out Russian interference. I think Kamala Harris said it's a fact that Russia interfered with our elections. Okay, well, if it's a fact, then we need to know the extent of it. Not just Donald Trump and anyone associated with him, but go ahead, do a full investigation. And that full investigation would have to look into Uranium One, which Mueller was involved in. It'll have to look into a lot of things, not just what Trump did. And it looks like, if anyone was involved in Russia, clearly it was Clinton and Obama, merely because they were in government at the time and they had the contacts with Russia. And of course, their argument could be, of course, we, quote, colluded with Russia. It's not collusion. We had dealings with Russia in the ordinary course, and that's true. But the point being is, you can't just limit any of this Russian collusion stuff to Donald Trump. Now, let's move on to Syria, which this doesn't make a stitch of sense, because Syria is backed by Russia, and Trump is threatening to go in there and bomb Syria. And if he was colluding with Russia, he doesn't appear to be. This would have to be a double bluff, wink, wink. We're going to bomb Syria, and he's bad-mouthing Putin now, saying that Putin is backing him. So he says something about an animal or something about Assad. So I'm not sure that it even makes sense to go after Trump for Russia, but they've convinced millions of people are rabid that Trump is some type of traitor. He's working with Russia, yet they've produced no evidence as such. And yet the people that are anti-Trump, they'll believe anything. If it's against Trump, they will believe it. And what makes it believable to them is because there's actually an investigation So this investigation, whether it comes up with anything, the mere fact that there's been an investigation has risen the consciousness of people. It's just like if you're arrested and someone sees you walk out of your house arrested, your thought is, it goes down in your neighbor's point of view. Oh, my neighbor's gotten arrested. He must have done something wrong. Say they went to the wrong house, and it was on the other side of town they should have gone, but the numbers were reversed or something like that. It wasn't. It was one was Cherry Lane and the other was Cherry Street, and he got arrested and he gets walked out. Well, the damage is already done. You've seen him walk out. In fact, what if there were cameras there when he got walked out? So it's the same thing, and people have that thought in their mind. It's been put in their mind that Trump colluded with Russia, that Trump's a traitor. And you see people online constantly going, oh, go Mueller, Mueller time. And they get to the point where since they're convinced Trump did something wrong, and they see these raids and they're told that you don't do these raids unless someone's done something wrong, and you want Trump to go down, then you can see how you can move into this mob mentality. Now, Dershowitz is a guy who voted against Trump. He's a big-time lawyer. And he actually sees this for what it is. And you do have liberals who realize that this is dangerous when you try to use the law for an outcome rather than the laws and the justice being blind. You've seen guys like Lawrence Tribe, used to be a very respected constitutional scholar. He's moved into conspiracy theories on how Trump shouldn't be president, how we can get Hillary in there. Why don't you start to use your intellect and your rhetoric to try to obfuscate legal principles? Well, then you've gone into the realm of you could just say anything to get an outcome. And we saw that with the Supreme Court when they said that Obamacare was constitutional as a tax, even though as a matter of law it wasn't, because Obamacare was passed as a law. It was never intended to be a tax, but the Supreme Court realized, oh, if we strike it down as unconstitutional as a law, well, then we're going to have a lot of problems. So we'll say it was unconstitutional as a law, but it's fine as a tax. So what Alan Dershowitz is going to meet with Donald Trump tonight, and I'm sure he's going to tell him things that Trump wants to hear, that this is unprecedented, that this is a these are Gestapo tactics, basically. There's no reason to have invaded Michael Cohen's office if he was giving over documents as he was asked. And so what is the rationale? I'd like to see what they said to the judge and who the judge is as to why they would think that this type of tactic was warranted. So on the day of, I guess it happened 2 days ago, it was on the 9th, I asked in a poll, should Trump fire Mueller? And you could see there's some restraint here. Now, it's interesting. I would believe that pro-Trumpers would just knee-jerk say yes, and anti-Trumpers would knee-jerk say no. However, if you are a anti-Trumper, you really should be saying yes, because you want to goad Trump into firing. And if you are a pro-Trumper, you really should be saying no, because you know that all firing would satisfy a urge just to get revenge and to be done with it, but it wouldn't really make anything go away. And the way to make this go away, I'm not sure what it is. It may be public opinion. I think the longer that the special counsel goes on and it veers further and further away from Russia, the more people are going to get tired of it, and the more the counter propaganda, that's what it is, can go and say, look, what are you doing? This is a witch hunt if we're not dealing with Russia anymore, and you're basically just uncovering every stone, trying to find something. You know, that's the old show me the man and I'll show you the crime. I mean, at some point, you will find something on Donald Trump. You'd find something probably on just about everyone, including Mother Teresa. So what people did, but the interesting thing was, in this little poll I did, was Mueller was the lowest one people fired. They figured that's the nuclear option, and I think people are wary of that. Rosenstein was the highest. People figured, get rid of him. I mean, he shouldn't be there anyway. He was involved. Mueller shouldn't be there either, but Rosenstein appointed him. So he's the guy that should go. He's the guy who was involved in signing off on the FISA warrants. He's the one who advised firing Comey. There's no reason he should be in his position. Sessions also very high, 77%. I think people are frustrated with him. And Trump has already started his counteroffensive. Attorney-client privilege is dead, he said, late the next day in the morning, and he's calling it a total witch hunt. Now, how this all plays out with Syria and Putin, it's unsure yet. We'll see what happens there. But I would think any attack, again, on Syria, just, it's not evidence that there's no collusion with Russia, but it's pretty strong that if there was, it was of no consequence. Because if Trump was supposed to help Russia, I mean, one could argue that, well, Clinton would have bombed them even more. I'm not sure. Anyway, let me know your thoughts on what's going on with the Trump raid, the raid on Trump's attorney's house, hotel room, and offices. Thank you very much.